On this episode, we revisit the subject of our very first neighborhood focus episode 2 years ago, Thonburi.
So if you want an update on all the hullabaloo in the Brooklyn of Bangkok, known as Thonburi, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 on a vacation and decided to stay when I found out that 7-Eleven sells hamburgers that use sticky rice in place of buns.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 19 years ago, fell in love with my annual elephantiasis exam that is necessary to get a work permit, so I never left.
What's that AC/DC song? Big Balls?
We want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, Noel Hernberger, who supports us at the show shout-out level. Stick around after we're done talking about the up-and-coming, some would say already here, neighborhood of Thonburi, to hear why Noel needs to have a sit-down with Ed to learn how to keep his cool when big home renovation projects are afoot.
Right.
Before we start, a huge thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about Greg's embarrassing hospital visit and our views on the coronavirus, which is on the front page of newspapers all over the world right now. To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
Yeah, before we get into the main show, we should go into a little detail on the corona thing, because we've got a couple of messages from people who are curious about it. We go into way more detail on the bonus show, but really a quick summary. I think our view, as of today, we're recording this on 30th of January, as of today, I don't think there's anything to worry about. I wouldn't postpone any plans to visit Thailand or Bangkok. People are very aware of what's going on. Lots of people are wearing masks, and everyone is following the news. So I don't like day-to-day life on the ground hasn't really changed, but things can change quickly, and I think it's in everyone's best interest, especially your best interest, to follow the news closely and make your own decisions. But for us right now, today, things haven't really changed that much in Bangkok.
That's right. Now, of course, it's your call. Of course, it's your life. But pretty much my university, everyone I know, everyone is leading a pretty normal life. So yeah. I think right now it's there are really no worries in Thailand.
Right. Awareness is key, and things can change quickly. So read up on the news.
That's right.
All right. Well, on this episode, we figured it was time for an update of our very first neighborhood focus show. On episode 70 of Season 2 with me and Evo, which aired actually almost exactly 2 years ago to the day from this episode, Ed.
Interesting.
Yeah, we discussed the west side of the Chao Phraya River, Bangkok's Brooklyn, Thonburi. Now, back then we discussed what was going on, and it turns out at the time, not a lot was going on, but what a difference 2 years can make. As you may or may not know, Thonburi is in the middle of a boom right now, and it looks very, very different from how it did 2 years ago. So the other night, Ed and I put on our walking shoes and we walked around the neighborhood to see what was coming up, the progress that was being made on some big projects, and just kind of get a feel of how things look from someone who was walking around. So what did you think?
Yeah, well, first, just a point of clarification for our listeners. It's common for people who live in Bangkok to just call everything on the other side of the river Thonburi.
Yeah, right.
So
it's
just kind of common. Like, so you have the main part of Bangkok, and then the other side is Thonburi. But technically, there are many districts on the other side of the river, and Thonburi is just like a section. It's just like a slice of the other side of the river. So in this case, we're using the word Thonburi kind of broadly to refer to the entire west side of the river. But we also will mention some specific districts, in particular Khlong San. So just in case you're confused, if you look at a map and you see that Thonburi looks small, that's my point of clarification. Does that make sense, Greg?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Yeah, and on the show, on the episode artwork too. I'll make a little graphic that highlights the area that we're talking about that we think sort of is the heart of Thonburi when most people say Thonburi. So
Yeah,
you can
but
see what
in
we
general,
think
people use it to just mean the other side,
there. Yeah,
the dark side.
yeah. Now, I think, we have to start with the elephant in the room, almost literally, and that is the anchor of a lot of these big developments right now. It's hard to miss, but that is Icon Siam.
That's right.
When you name a new mall, people are like, "Oh, another mall." But hey, man, it's hard to escape the gravity of a giant construction project like that, and Icon Siam has come a long way in the year or so since it's opened.
Yeah, so of course we did a show on Icon when it opened. Listeners, in case you don't know what we're talking about a giant mega mall complex condo thingamajob, which opened. Has it been a year already, Greg?
Yeah, I would say roughly a year. Yeah.
Yeah. On our side of the river. So, we've always had a bunch of malls on our side of the river. We have the mall Top Pra, we have Central Pink Lao, but this is a brand new, super swanky mega mall. And I know a lot of our listeners will know exactly what we're talking about. But in case you don't, you can just Google it, Icon Siam, like ICON, and they have a nice website. And basically, it's the newest mall in Bangkok, and we talked about it a lot when it opened. And of course, Greg and I have gone there since then, just in our daily lives. But we made a special trip there early this week, just to kind of see what's going on. And Greg, what was your take? I've got some opinions, but what was your take after 9 months or a year?
Yeah, well, people are totally justified, I think, in like sort of rolling their eyes when another mall opens up. But look, the fact of the matter is that the malls are sort of these gravity wells of activity that draw people in Bangkok, and it's too hot to go for a bloody walk and play outside with your kid or something like that. So malls are sort of a lifestyle thing, a legitimate lifestyle activity for families and a lot of people. They have food, they have entertainment, they have shopping, they have places where you can hang out with your friends. So they are like a legit destination. And if you want to avoid the mall, go, more power to you. That's great. But they do offer a real destination for a lot of people. And when Icon Siam opened, I got to say, I think it was kind of a crap mall. I think it was your observation that it seemed like it was built specifically for Chinese tourists to go in. Like, it didn't really offer much to the people who lived in this area.
Yeah, to try to remember my impressions, obviously it's very nice. It's very nice. It's kind of a beautiful space. And one thing I did like about it and still do is that Icon went out of its way to kind of be an Asian mall. So, the fact that I think it was targeted towards Chinese tourists, that I do consider to be a negative. But the style of the mall, I thought then, and I still think, is kind of a positive in that it's trying not to copy Western malls. And Greg and I still think it doesn't have like Western fast food. So a lot of the typical things you see in every mall, like a McDonald's, Greg and I couldn't find it. So we think it doesn't have it. So, so even back then, there was something I did like about it.
Well, it's interesting. That's kind of a double-edged sword, though, because, like, you're right. It doesn't have a bookstore, at least like a dedicated bookstore. It doesn't have any fast food. It doesn't have like a lot of like food court options. It does have a food court that only opened in the past few months, but it's really, really small for a mall that size. It's sort of almost like an afterthought.
Right.
So the dining options there are not really great unless you are really into like sitting down at like a real sit-down restaurant. Most malls have fast food or like shake places or ice cream places or, and there's a couple of those, but there's no McDonald's, there's no Subway, there's no Burger King or KFC, which you said is maybe a good thing. It's also maybe a bad thing because a lot of people who go to the mall to walk around and hang out can't really afford to sit down at a swanky sit-down restaurant, So
well, but I think and this is, I guess I'll get into my new impressions, having now just visited there again.
Right.
That first floor. So I should just to be clarified. The ground floor. When you walk on the ground floor, like the vibe of the first floor is supposed to be kind of like an Asian market, street food kind of thing, and that was there before. But man, I feel like it's really expanded. Like, and now we really feel like there's just like 50 or 60 places on the first floor. And you're right. but those are not swanky restaurants. So it's like the first floor. It's not a typical fast food food court. You're right, but it's not swanky restaurants on that ground floor.
No, there are a few nice restaurants around the edges that are a bit more expensive, and there are a lot of snack foods, but there's also not a lot of places to sit. So I don't know. I'm really not that impressed with the dining options there. But it has improved. There are some, like there's a coffee club, which is a good favorite of mine. There's a couple of nice bars and restaurants on the top floor that have a nice balcony looking out over the river. There's also a really nice, beautiful movie theater, including a full-size IMAX theater. And they just opened recently something called Super Park, which is this giant playground for sort of like kids between like 5 and 15 years old, trampolines and slides and basketball and, you know, climbing walls and things like that. So that's a really cool option to have for families who want to go to the mall.
Yeah. Well, let me say this. I'm not a mall guy. I don't know any guys who don't have kids who are like people who like to go to the mall. But I don't know. I kind of think Icon's worth a visit. I mean, I wouldn't put it top of my list of things to do in Bangkok, but if you're already an expat, or if you're just looking for something a little bit different, or if you have shopping to do, and you don't want to go to a typical mall, I do think it's just got a different style, man. I kind of appreciate that it's trying not to copy Western malls, and I kind of like that. It just has a different vibe. Like when we were just walking around, I'm just like, this is unique. Like it doesn't remind me of any other malls I've been to in Bangkok.
Yeah, definitely worth a wander around. Now, the thing about Icon Siam is that it's so big, and that it's sort of like pulled all this other construction in. And right across the street, there's a big construction site. There's going to be like a big new hotel going up, and you just know that it's going to be a knock-on effect, right? All of the little shop houses and other buildings that surround it, probably in concentric circles, are going to slowly start to erode as these new developments come in. And I heard my friend said that he read on some website about the other day that the little shop houses there that are next to or in the neighborhood of Icon Siam are selling for 135 million baht.
That can't. I just feel like, I mean, you and I talked about this. We need to verify that, because that's, to me, that can't be right. That's $4 or $5 million. That can't be right.
It's for 4.3 million US dollars. But
yeah, I don't see that.
Icon Siam cost 50 billion baht to build. So
yeah, no. I mean, the complex is insane, and just to be clear, it's more than a mall. It's like two separate, beautiful luxury condominium buildings, and it's very close to the peninsula, correct? And of course, they're building the SkyTrain Gold extension. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Gold Line is something that's really going to change the area as well. I think it's probably about half or 60% done right now, and it's going to go from Thonburi BTS station. It's like a little spike, a little spur, and it's going to go down to Charanakan Road and then run right along Charanakan Road, right past the mall, and it's going to take a left at Taksin Hospital and then go right up that road past Long 1919 towards the Memorial Bridge, Sapan Put, which will eventually connect with the Purple Line extension. But let's be honest here, it's probably not going to happen for another 10 years, if at all. So that is part of what's making the neighborhood change so much, because, of course, you build a big SkyTrain line, even if it's only a spur, and big changes follow.
No doubt. And, so the bottom line is certainly Icon and the surrounding area. It's definitely the hottest part of Thonburi. I think there is some other stuff happening, but it's kind of the center of a fairly long stretch of stuff.
Right. And the cool thing about this, of course, is that Thonburi is still Thonburi. It's still got its sort of like backwater hick vibe that I think attracts a lot of people to it. And even right in the middle of all this giant construction, you can still find little soys and hidden restaurants like Ed and I did. And here's some audio that we recorded last night as we were walking around. So
this is kind of spooky back here, dude.
Yeah, so here we are. We're doing the show on Thonburi, which is a busy neighborhood, but I've taken Ed into this sort of quiet little dark back soy. I promise I'm not going to rape or kill you, Ed.
Yeah, dude, this is, it does not look safe.
No, but it's interesting because in this busy neighborhood next to these billion baht, oh shit, I just sprained my ankle. Next to these billion baht malls, there's still these weird little side shortcuts and soys that are completely empty and totally abandoned and lead to these weird temples and little houses and neighborhoods and stuff. That looks like a zoo. And you know what I'm saying though? Like we're next to this billion baht thing and we're walking in this slum. It's so weird.
Yeah. That looks like a low rent menagerie.
Watch out for this hole here in the pavement. I found this place when the only bike ride I've ever gone on where I returned with more people than we left with. Because we randomly met some Thai dude who was out biking. He loved to bike too. And he came back with us because he lived in this area. And I said, we got to go to Khlong San Market and ride our bicycles all the way up past on the street. And he goes, no, I know this cool shortcut. So we came down here, and this is why I know it. There's dishes out on the soy.
These are essentially like shanties that we're walking past, and we're practically touching like Icon Siam, or at least the super expensive condos that are part of Icon Siam, and like immediately next to us are essentially shanties.
Right. Like if we look way up on the left is the Millennium Hilton, and on the right is the Mandarin Oriental Residences, both places that I can barely afford to eat at. And there's like little slums and still water and all these crappy old motorcycles. It's crazy.
Now, the question is, how much would one of these houses cost? I mean, they look like they're worth, 10,000 baht, but then they're right in between extremely high rent properties.
Yeah, that's a good question. Another thing that, who owns this land and why are they holding out? And I'm wondering what kind of offers they've got so far. There's a little local restaurant with a couple of people chilling out. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's quite odd. And I as I said in the recording, to me, this is a very Bangkok thing to have an incredibly expensive development, super high so to use Thai lingo, and then immediately next to it is essentially shacks.
Yeah, like over swamps. Like puddles of still water and corrugated tin roofs and things like this. So
it's so Bangkok to me. That's almost like that to me. That is the icon. That is the iconic thing of Thailand, that you just have these radical differences in wealth, just like literally touching each other, like abutting each other.
Right, it's like a twist of a mystery movie, like Icon Siam, and then at the end you find out that the icon wasn't the mall; it was Somchai in this little house all along. He's the icon.
Anyway, the point is just that the neighborhood around Icon is fascinating.
Yeah, it's really neat. And then we walked a bit further down the river. We stopped by Never Ending Summer, the Jam Factory, and Khlong San Market, which you had never been to. I'm surprised to hear that.
That's right. So, in case listeners don't know, there is along this area, which we call Khlong San or Khlong San, there is a market there, and there are several like well-established restaurants/bars.
Yeah, it's quite well known. I won't spend too much time on it, but the Jam Factory and the Never Ending Summer were opened by this very famous Thai architect. His last name is Bunak. I'm not familiar with his first name. I can't remember. But, they're sort of destination places right next to Khlong San Market, which in itself is a destination place. By the way, if you're ever at Khlong San Market, stop by just like a couple of tens of meters inside from the main road on the left-hand side. If you're walking into the market, there's a woman who bakes fresh bread every day, and we bought a couple of loaves the other night. I bought this raisin bread loaf, and as I told Ed, it's not so much a loaf of raisin bread as it is a bag of bread filled with raisins.
But
I finished mine in 2 sittings. It was really good.
Yeah, it's quite good. Just look for the bread lady and ask for the raisin bread. It's quite good.
And like Ed said, I think we say Thonburi is a pretty big area, at least as people when they think of Thonburi, but I think that almost all of the new development and construction and sort of places of note, quote unquote, that are going to come up over the next 3, 5, 8 years are going to be along this like 2-kilometer stretch of Charanakan Road, roughly from maybe a little bit before Sapan Taksin, maybe all the way up to Taksin Hospital. I think that's going to be the center of whatever's going to happen here.
That's clearly like the hottest area. Now, there is some stuff happening along Charon Sinitwang. Obviously, we have the new SkyTrain line that's going down Charon Sinitwang that is now in like a trial period. So that's the blue line. And of course, I think that SkyTrain, or technically it's MRT, but it's above ground, that will help Charon Sinitwang develop. So there's just not much nightlife, So, I've been living on Charon Sinitwang. I just kind of moved from one soy on Charon Sinitwang to another soy on Charon Sinitwang. And it's very developed in that, it's the Brooklyn of Bangkok. There's 1 million people that live over here, but there's not a lot to do. Like, there's not a lot of there's not a lot of bars and nightlife. There's not a lot of cool sites. There's a few things, but not a lot.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of like you said, there's not a lot of nightlife. There's not a lot of like big areas. I would say most of Thonburi is still really residential.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of really cool places, hidden little restaurants and fun little finds that people like. One of my favorites, very close to Icon Siam, is a place called Save Our Souls Craft Beer. That was a favorite of Evo when he was here too. He got to be very good friends with the owner. I think we mentioned it on the podcast many times before, but it's a good little place, good for a party. They got a couple of really interesting local craft beers there. That's on Charon Nakhon Soi 10. And there's also the 14th Barrel, which is a similar craft beer style place. We've had a couple of late nights there, and that's on Charon Nakhon Soi 14. And I would be doing myself and yourself a disservice if I did not mention Feed the Beast, which is a bit further down towards the Rama 3 bridge. So Feed the Beast is on just before Soi 47 on Charon Nakhon, and it's a really, really good barbecue place. Ed, you're not invited because you're vegetarian. You wouldn't like this place, but they have probably the best pulled pork burger I've had in Bangkok.
Wow.
Really worth a visit.
Yeah.
And this is also getting down towards where they're planning to build Asia Teak 2 on this side of the river, which is going to link by cable car to Asia Teak 1 and a couple of other really big hotel projects, but that's all like way in the future. And while I'm on the topic, it's worth it to mention too that Suan Pa Chalum Prakiat Park, which is underneath Sapantaksin Bridge, just on the Thonburi side of the river. It's always been kind of a nice little convenient park to have, but it's always been a little bit grungy and rough around the edges. But as we record this, it's getting a pretty significant makeover, and it's getting completely renovated. I think in large part due to money from Icon Siam, who are putting some money into like beautifying the neighborhood, which is nice to see. So they put a new kids playground in there, and they're repaving the running track around it, and I think it's going to look quite nice when it's done. So just sort of more of a bit of an indication that big changes are coming to this neighborhood.
Well, Greg, since you got to mention Feed the Beast, that means I'm allowed to mention an interesting place that I discovered a couple of months ago called Sutuntip Vegetarian. And it's actually, it's not far from your place, not too far anyway. It's on Charon Nakhon 36. And I was kind of surprised to find it because it's an entirely vegan menu. It's a pretty big place. It's all Thai food. And they've got some pretty good like mock meat. There's a couple local brands of mock meat, so I'm not talking about international brands like Beyond Burger or Impossible Burger. These are local types of mock meat that are pretty good, and I was pretty surprised. And it's cheap. One advantage of the kind of local mock meat is it just tends to be cheaper, and so you're paying more like Thai prices rather than upper middle class bourgeois Western prices. So check it out if you're into some vegetarian food. I give it a big thumbs up.
What's it called again?
It's called Sutuntip, Sutunthip. It's on Charon Nakhon 36, so kind of down the street from you. It's not far from Riverside Plaza, not quite across the street, but not too far from there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I wanted to mention this kind of interesting hostel / bar called the Overstay. It's in between Charon Sinitwang 40 and 42, so it's quite a ways down from. So it's kind of on the other side of Thonburi from you, but it's closer to where my new place is. And the Overstay is kind of interesting. It's a very inexpensive hostel, so I mean it's a cheap place to crash. So it's kind of like a backpacker / I guess semi-hippie kind of place, the kind of place where you can get a room for like a couple $100 baht or 300 baht, presumably, sharing with other people. So it's like a hostel kind of place. But it's also kind of an artsy bar where they do a fair amount of live music with kind of an experimental kind of techno vibe. And I've only been there a few times, but it's kind of quirky and different, and I don't really know any other place like it in Bangkok. It's it's a little off the beaten path, and I think that's probably why it's cheaper for people to crash there. But it's just different. So it's again, it's kind of thing. If you're an expat or if you think you know Bangkok, but you've never checked out the Overstay, it's just one of those places that it's different. It's got its own vibe, its own personality. It's very, very affordable, but with a cool kind of artsy vibe.
Cool. Well, I mean, let's finish on the audio that we recorded at the end of our walk. But the bottom line here is that Thonburi is a huge place. I mean, not the official neighborhood of Thonburi, but actually what people think of as Thonburi is a huge place. And of course, we missed a ton of things. We don't have time, or we don't have time to explore, nor the time to talk about all of them. But it is a cool neighborhood. There's definitely going to be a central point of it, sort of like, the Thonburi, the Sukhumvit of Thonburi will be Charonakan. And it's big changes coming soon. So if you haven't been over here yet, get over here now, because it's sure changed a lot in the past couple of years, and it's only going to change even more in the next few years. So let's finish on the audio that Ed and I recorded, our impressions after we finished our walk the other night, before we jumped in taxis and headed home to our warm beds. So I think we're about done our little walking tour of Thonburi now, Ed. And the funny thing is, we're actually not even really technically in Thonburi. I think this neighborhood is called Khlong San. But whatever hugs the river, like from the river west, is generally considered Thonburi.
Yeah, I think most people just think of the other side of the river as Thonburi, but it actually is a specific district. But anyway, this Khlong San area, it's clearly going to be a big deal in the future. I mean, there's so much development here, and there's already a lot of cool restaurants and shops.
Yeah, and I think it's all of the development. I'm going to make a prediction. I think all of the new, really cool, notable development, the big stuff that's going to happen over the next 5 or so years, is going to be centered along this stretch from like Sapan Taksin up to the Rong Payaban Taksin Hospital, just past Icon Siam. So I think that like anything that's going to come in is going to be really big and new is going to happen here. So look for this stretch to be sort of like the Ari of Thonburi, or the Sukhumvit of Thonburi, in the next 5 years. But there has been a lot of new cool stuff added on so far, and way more coming, judging from the SkyTrain, the cranes, and the construction projects.
So once the spur is done, going from Thonburi Station past Icon Siam, and then it's going to loop around and eventually connect to the Purple Line. I think
the Purple Line extension, whenever that's built.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to be hip. I think we're in a pre-hip or early hip stage, and it's going to become even more hip.
I think it can go one of two ways. It can go either hip, or it can go like way too expensive. Because I'm looking up now at the Four Seasons Residences. I think it's a giant new building that went up, and we were just talking about the Mandarin Oriental Residences, and there's some really high-end places around here already.
Yeah, well, it's definitely got the high-end chic, but on the street level, where Greg and I hang out, it's pretty reasonably priced.
Yeah. We just bought some delicious, my favorite bread place in this area. This bread lady who makes fresh baked loaves of raisin bread, and some good local fare if you know where to find it. Best way to do that is to get out and walk around.
Yeah, best way to do that is listen to our advice and check out Khlong San.
Right. All right, well, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we have to learn to live with, no matter how we feel about it. And this week, it is your turn, Ed.
Okay, yeah, so this is something you and I have talked about before, but I don't think we've talked about it specifically on the show, and you kind of know that it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, but I'm not sure I've got your full views on it. So, Greg, what do you think about coffee shops in Bangkok? In particular, one that begins with an S. Okay? What's your take on just the average temperature you might find in a Starbucks? Does it bother you? I mean, I'm kind of giving it away because it bothers me, man.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed it over the past few weeks. They're really cold.
Dude, it's driving me crazy. I mean, I'm revealing my take. I'm a loathe. I don't know what's up because I like Starbucks, and in particular, like I'm a nitro coffee guy. I got to get my nitro, And
Yeah.
a lot of times I want to stay in there and grade exams or do my work, and it's freaking freezing in there.
No, I'm live with. I would prefer it to be a bit warmer, but I would rather be colder than hotter. So,
Dude, it's cold.
I just,
and it's annoying because it's like, there's a Starbucks near my university, and I just started thinking like, okay, this is just my local one. Whoever the manager is, they got to turn down low. But then I go to another one, and it's still freezing.
maybe there was like a centrally mandated temperature they got to keep them at or something.
Dude, I think I'm telling you, Starbucks just reminds me of Thai movie theaters, and we've talked about Thai movie theaters. They're always freezing.
Yeah, well, I've posted pictures to Instagram before of usually women sitting in Starbucks doing their homework or something, and they've got like a full duvet wrapped around them or like a big winter jacket or
I can never remember. It's like every time I go in there, I'm like, damn it, I forgot like my sweatshirt.
No, I'm going to say live with. I would prefer it if they weren't so cold, but I can handle it. I would rather be a little bit too cold than a little bit too warm. So I'm down with it.
I'm a big loathe.
Yeah.
I'm almost
live with for me.
I'm almost to leave Thailand. We got to change our name back. I'm leaving the country. Damn it, I can't take it.
Right. What made you leave Starbucks?
I can't handle it. They're too cold. I hope someone's listening. I hope there are listeners out there who work for Starbucks. Please talk to your boss, please.
That's funny.
So, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Noel Hernberger for lending us his support at the show shout-out level. Greg, what did you find out about Noel?
Well, Ed, after 2 decades in the kingdom, like you and I each have been, you start to get a sense of accomplishment as you slowly become one of the quote-unquote senior guys in Thailand. You build up a level of street cred.
That's right.
But every once in a while, our status is put to shame, like with our friend Noel, who has been coming to Thailand. Check this out, Ed. He's been coming to Thailand every few years since 1982.
Wow.
I was 7.
No. So he doesn't live here yet? Is that what you're saying?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
1982 was the year Return of the Jedi came out in theaters. No, he doesn't live here yet, but Noel said he's married to a Thai and he's going to retire to Bangkok in a few years in, check this out, in the neighborhood called Satu Pradit. And we talked about that on episode 51 of season 3 as one of the cool neighborhoods of Bangkok where you can go and sort of like, you're still in Bangkok, but you can get an old, like the old school Bangkok.
Right.
So he's going to have a real good time when he gets there.
Nice.
Yeah, but I think that he mentioned something about how might want to build something or renovate something there. And he said he would love to hear the horror stories of our home remodel projects that we've done, specifically you, because we've talked on the show about how you're building your house. And he said, my experience has been that even with a well laid out design and capable workmen, it's easy to foul things up and hard to correct mistakes due to losing face on either side. So Ed, what advice would you give to Noel when he does make it to Bangkok and starts building or renovating his place?
Well, it's a great question, and I know you and I have talked about doing a whole show on building a house in Thailand, so that's in the works.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing. I think he does make a good point that I think there's some face issues involved. I also think there's just communication issues because obviously most Farongs don't speak Thai really well, and obviously most Thai workers are not, they don't necessarily have great English. You got communication issues. My only advice, and which is unfortunately not always possible, is just to keep a very close eye on the project. What I learned from the work I had is that I really had to check every day. What I would do is on my way to work, I would go to the space and take a picture. So at 8:45 a.m. I had a picture of the status, and then at the end of work I would go back to the space and take another picture, and so I could just track it day by day. And so if something was wrong, I wasn't able to catch it hour by hour, but at least I had like a daily thing. I mean, right. I know in a way that advice is kind of common sense. It's not super insightful, but that was the only thing I learned, is that I couldn't leave it. I couldn't say, hey, do this, and come back 4 days later. That's not a good idea. Right.
I think it's easy to get complacent is what I've heard. I can leave it for a day, and then I can leave it for 3 days, but then nope.
Not a good idea.
You can't press Control Z on a renovation project.
Yeah, I was just shocked at some of the miscommunications. And, we've talked about miscommunications in Thai before, and to me, they're still fascinating because you talk to someone and it's just it seems like you totally understand each other. Like you're just like, all right, we got it eye to eye. There doesn't seem to be any possibility of ambiguity. And then you come back 2 days later and it's like they've taken out the wrong staircase. And you're like, what? Like, what? You know, it's like, so like the miscommunications are really things that are, I mean, they're truly under the radar. That's the definition of, like, you can't see them. You know, it's like, that's the definition of a miscommunication. It's
like waking up from an operation and the doctor operated on the wrong knee or something. Like, how does this even happen?
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, when it comes to Thai construction projects, it happens.
Right. All right, Noel, there you have it. Ed's advice straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. But I would say, I'm going to put it out there now, Noel is going to host the first ever Bangkok podcast house party when he finally retires here and gets his cool little pad going in Satu Pradit. We'll be there.
I'm in.
BYOB, Noel's place.
I am in.
Thanks for your support, man. We do appreciate it, and we hope to see you when you make it over here.
Yep. All right, a final thanks to all of our patrons who help keep the show ad-free. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
That's right. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube, chat with us online, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I'm BKK Greg. So thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll see you back here next week.
Yep. See you next week.
We are live and alive, live from Budokan. I never really understood that. Do you know what the meaning of that is? That was a big thing that Wayne's World used to say.
Because Live at Budokan is an album. It's like an early classic rock. Who was live at Budokan? Like Peter Frampton, I think.
Oh, really? If only there was a way I could find out these questions.
It's Peter Frampton, like only... live at the. No, it was Cheap Trick. Cheap Trick live at the Budokan.
You're right, Cheap Trick. Okay, there we go.
Album.
Thank you, Internet.
I listened to that album when I was a kid, yeah.
Budokan is in the middle of Tokyo, and it translates as Marshall Ways Hall. It was built for the 1964 judo competition in the Summer Olympics, and it's hosted such acts as Tina Turner, The Beatles, Bryan Adams, Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, Cheap Trick, Dream Theater, John Hyatt, Kiss, Mr. Big, Ozzy Osbourne, Judas Priest, Journey, Deep Purple, and it was the location of ABBA's last concert.
Wow.